Hello and welcome to the second set of Criterion Challenge movies for 2026 on my channel. For those who don't know, the Criterion Challenge is hosted annually by letterboxed user Ben. He compiles a list of 52 different challenges or themes, and you are supposed to watch a movie that is in the Criterion collection for each week. Criterion is a company that releases movies physically and puts their stamp of approval on movies. I did the first set of 4 2 weeks ago, and I'm ready to tackle the next 4 as I will be doing it monthly from here on out. Let's get right into the first movie. Category number 5 was to watch a romance movie, some simple genre exploration. I went with a decently popular one, Kar-wai's Days of Being Wild. This movie is about playboy Yuri and his relationship with 3 different women. First is Lee Zen, who wants a serious relationship but Yuri doesn't, so they end things. Then he starts a relationship with dancer Mimi. It is explosive and they fight a lot. Then the final relationship is not romantic, but it's one with his adopted mother who refuses to tell Yuri who his real mom is. Yuri's friend Zeb has a crush on Mimi, and Le Zen enters a relationship with a policeman Tide. Yuri is eventually told his mother lives in the Philippines and goes to find her but is unsuccessful, ending up drunk on the street. Tide finds him and tries to bring him home, but Yuri is shot. Mimi ends the movie still looking for Yuri. I feel like I need to start this off by talking about how Days of Wild has kind of been dealt a bad hand. I have seen both In the Mood for Love and Chungking Express, 2 Wong Kar-wai movies I enjoy and are considered some of the best of all time. This movie acts as his training arc, feeling a little similar, and it also has Maggie Cheung. Days of Being Wild is not as good as In the Mood for Love, but it feels a little unfair to judge it based on that movie, so I will try and keep the comparisons minimal. But they do exist in discussion with each other, so I at least have to bring it up a little bit. This movie is another great example at just how great Wong Kar-wai is at representing longing love. Feelings that the characters either don't or can't express. About the feelings you bundle up and keep to yourself until you can't anymore, and they just come out making love messier than it should be. For everyone except Yuri, the main character, that is. You have Lee Zen, who desperately wants a serious connection but can't quite voice that or force it into existence. Tide, who is so desperate for connection he waits by a phone booth for a call from her. Zeb sells a whole car to try and get Mimi to like him. Then there is Mimi, who is so desperately in love, trying her best to get the attention she wants out of the relationship. All these side characters have these massive feelings which I adore, but they are just the side characters. Instead, our main focus is Mr. Mommy Issues over here. He is rather detached from the romance of it all, the connection to the women being purely physical. Yuri as an anchor for the movie is so misguided and I think the wrong choice. His thoughts and feelings are boring, because they don't mean anything. The potential and semi-realized interest comes from how he affects other people around him. Reminds me of Stellan Skarsgård character in Sentimental Value, an emotionally detached man who pushes the feelings of others, which causes those feelings to be more impactful. The movie was smart enough to spend time on the people being affected, just not enough time in my mind. The entire third act abandons the romance and just goes into his mom troubles, which is easily the worst part of the movie and sucks all the momentum out of it. Lee Zen has about a minute-long conclusion, and it's way better and more intriguing than Yuri's massive one. Yuri's feeling of being so detached doesn't just affect him either, it makes both of his romantic relationships feel less than. A lot of the romantic feelings just feel like a dumbed down version of other movies. He was so obviously uninterested you could feel the lack of chemistry between the characters, and that does drag a movie down for me. I guess they tried to show the feelings and you can see them a little bit, but the movie at no point makes an effort to make me feel the romance in the way other movies do. Days of Being Wild had a structure of shifting perspective and showing you different characters throughout. It was a clever way to show all the different sides, but they just abandoned that in this last third. I really think the filmmaking was top notch for the first 2/3 of this, but throwing it all away in that last just ends on a little bit of a sour note and affects how I feel about the rest of it. Nobody else out there can shoot lonely people like Wong Kar-wai can. The way he frames them, the rhythms of his movies, it just makes you feel that loneliness more and more. It is a little rougher than his later outings, but it still stands beside them as great filmmaking and direction through here. Tony Chung is solid in this movie. He didn't really stand out, but he played his role. Maggie stays goated even if her role was a little more hidden than I like. Stripped back, quiet emotion is where she shines, so she was in her element with this one. Then the absolute star of this movie was Karina Lau. Frustrated but in love, she's given the most and excels at every point. I was glued to my screen while she was acting. The raw emotions of her performance topping that of what was given to her in the script, maximizing her screen time. Definitely my favorite performance of the movie. It stood out from the others. Days of Being Wild is an annoying movie for just how fine it is when it could be great. But at the end of the day, this movie feels like a training arc for Kar-wai. He had to make mistakes and focus his movie on an unlikable detached dude so he could go on to cement himself with later greatness. And sure, I guess I'd take that trade. This movie, In the Mood for Love, and 2046 are an informal thematic trilogy. I covered In the Mood for Love last year and Days of Being Wild this year. Maybe in 2026 I will finally watch 2046. Category 6 was to watch one of the 20 least watched movies in the collection according to Letterboxd. This is the category I adore the idea of. The whole point of this, to me at least, is to watch movies not talked about often. That being said, I had picked a different movie to Don't Play As Cheap, but I couldn't find it with English subtitles, so I shifted gears to this one. When it comes to colorful musicals, I can love or hate them, so I figured I'd take a risk and try this one. In this world, demons take human form and crash parties, bringing misery in the name of the devil. Experienced demon Brother Dave warns Trinity to not go to a party thrown by Miss Mabel. They cannot be messed with and you will not successfully shut the party down. Mabel throws parties every weekend, but this one is in celebration of her niece, Ernestine. Despite Brother Dave's warnings, Trinity tries his best to break up the party, but nothing works. He then tries insulting and berating Ernestine, which causes her to cry. He feels sorry and decided he can no longer break up the party. There's some love triangle stuff in here. He loves her now and she loves a different guy. Brother Dave steps in and decides he needs to help break it up, but everything he does just makes the party cooler and better. Trinity fully leaves the plan behind and gets engaged to Ernestine, while Dave makes a move on Miss Mabel as one last attempt to break things up. However, she was into it, which causes him to turn into a cockroach and try to escape, but he is murdered because he turned into a cockroach. Don't Play As Cheap is a movie full of personality and color. That coloring comes mostly from the costumes. Characters wear bright, striking outfits that help them be easily identifiable. The look of this is right up my alley. The costume, set design, coloring, lighting. It feels like at every possible design choice, they went with whatever makes the frame the most interesting to look at. The movie does look a little cheap, but that makes it even more charming. It was a small indie production, I can't really ding it for that. They did the best with what they could in terms of the resources. Gives it that little engine that could feeling to it that I really enjoy. I'm also fascinated by the production of this movie. Director Martin Van Peeble, which is an amazing name by the way, got the idea for the story after visiting a party thrown by an older woman and wrote a book in French, La Fête à Harlem. I took 2 years of French in high school. I can translate this for you. La Fête à Harlem means the house in Harlem. I know my foreign languages. Van Peebles took this book and translated it into English, then adapted it into a stage show. He then took that show and made it into a movie. Insane just how many steps it took to get here. You'd think something would get lost along the way, and changing the mediums of a story 3 times over the course of half a decade might be a bad idea, but it turned out wonderfully. You could definitely feel that adaptation here though. You can see how these sets would come from the stage, and this movie was so dialogue dependent. That feeling's not a bad one to me. It's just something you have to know going in. If you don't like movies that kind of feel like plays, this one might not be for you. The most basic plot here works really well. On the ground level, the movie is about cheer and happiness, about good triumphing over evil, and it's also about love. The heart of the movie is pure, the storyline being about pure positivity and women being themselves. I called it the basic plot because this is what you see happen in the movie, but there is much more behind everything. Van Peeble directed Sweetback's badass song. The film is often credited with starting the blaxploitation genre. A lot of this movie has to deal with the black experience, which I'm not qualified to talk about, but I can definitely see it here. There are essays out there that can cover this topic way better than I can, go read them, but there is an overarching theme about life in America and racism people deal with. How people won't let that racism stop them from living life to their fullest. That's the big idea plot that I think is here. Don't Play As Cheap was released while one of Van Peeble's stage musicals was playing. Ain't Supposed to Die a Natural Death. They parallel each other with the stage show being a little darker about the less glamorous side of life in America. I tried to find a recording of the show online, but I just couldn't. I wish I could talk about it more here. But the movie did its job of making me want to watch a musical, like going out of my way to watch one. That is just how much I enjoyed the music performances of this movie. They were a delightful part, great singing and writing. All of the characters are so easily understandable, but that works as a feature. You know a Miss Mabel in real life, an older woman so full of joy and determined to provide a good time for everyone else. You know a fun spun who sucks the life out of a party. It works so well just how identifiable these people are. You get them in an instant because you know these people. I also just love Brother Dave as a character. He is such a hater at his core. He didn't tragically fall into a deal with the devil. There was no redemption arc for him. He just saw hatred as the only pure thing in the world and dedicated his eternity to being rude to people. I have to respect that level of petty anger. Don't Play Us Cheap is the exact kind of movie I do the Criterion Challenge to find. These underwatched, underappreciated movies that are great. The reason I'm making these videos, to hopefully bring some attention to these and talk about them. It might falter a little bit and lose itself in there. It might not be perfect, but it was a great time and a fantastic piece of art. We have another simple category, pick a movie from the Criterion collection of queer films. I was thinking about choosing a more historically significant queer movie, but Saving Face had sat on my watch list for 2 months, so I hopped on the opportunity to get a watch and slotted it in here. But in retrospect, I think it does sit as a significant queer movie in history. Will is a closeted lesbian afraid of what her family will think. She starts a relationship with Vivian, the daughter of one of her mother's friends. Vivian's dad is also Will's boss. Vivian wants to be open with the relationship, but Will doesn't. At the same time, Will's mom, Huan Lan, is kicked out from her parents' place for getting pregnant while unmarried and crashes at Will's place. There's a whole drama about who the father is, with her being unwilling to tell. Will finds a note from the father saying he wished they could be together despite the age gap. She crashes her mother getting married to a man she doesn't love and reveals she knows the baby's father is this 90-plus-year-old man, but swerve, it was his son. Will and Huan Li leave and talk. Will is finally accepted and tries to stop Vivian from leaving for Paris, but Will still won't kiss her in public. Months later, when Vivian is home from Paris, their mothers trick them into meeting, and Will finally kisses Vivian in public, happily ever after. Yeah, of course I love this movie. I love myself a good old complicated relationship where you can see everyone's point of view. I love troubled child-parent relations in movies. I love queer stories. Normally in these types of stories, it's very easy to pick a side. One of the characters is actively treating the other poorly. But Saving Face avoids that entirely. The crux of hiding the relationship being the queerness is what is different. It is understandable that Will wants to hide from the world. It is scary. She does care about Vivian, but also about their safety. And then of course Vivian's side makes sense, creating a compelling friction there. Then we have the good old, reliable generation trauma cycle. My mom is not accepting of who I am, but largely because grandma wasn't accepting of who my mom was. Those wounds are hard to deal with, but we do because we love each other type stuff, and it's all in this movie. It just makes for excellent storytelling, and they handle it amazing here. Will understands her mom's trouble, and that mom does come around and take responsibility for taking so long to treat her daughter the way she needed to be treated. And that's the part that really makes it sing. Huan Li takes responsibility and says sorry for the way she's acted. This movie also sits very uniquely in my mind. Queer people, lesbians especially, don't really get this type of movie all that often, for multiple reasons. First off, it is very hard to find a movie that sits in this space. These cheesy, cute rom-coms about just women. We've gotten so many straight couple movies like this. The airport scene has been done to death, with the man rushing to tell the woman that he loves her. But this sits as a pillar of queer representation. The only other thing that I can think that sorta feels this role is 2022's Crush, but even that is a stretch. It is way more of a coming-of-age movie. I adore the idea that Criterion looked at this and agreed it was special enough to join the collection, that queer voices behind this were rewarded. Criterion has a reputation among film enthusiasts, some of the greatest of all time in the collection. It is deeply respected. Them being willing to put their stamp of approval on this shows they care about all facets of film. The collection isn't just Kurosawa's or Bergman's. Saving Face sitting next to movies widely considered some of the best of all time legitimizes it. It's okay for a movie to be a cute rom-com and pull at the heartstrings and you still really like it. It is also some great queer representation. It never feels the need to dumb things down or explain it to other people. You were just expected to get it. When the two of them meet, Viv invited Will to her show. There was no over-the-top hint that they were into each other. It just let their chemistry and feeling speak for itself. Which, OMG, the chemistry was amazing between Michelle and Lynn here. They felt like they cared about each other, and even when fighting, they were just so good together. But the other reason this stands as great in terms of queer representation is that it has a happy ending. So often in queer movies, the story ends in heartbreak. heartbreak. There was such a focus on queer trauma that I feel like happiness and positivity can be left behind. Saving Face does not bother with any of that. It gives you the good ending and they got engaged. Queer joy is just as important, if not more so, than the bad moments. This movie is also very funny. I have been focusing on the rom aspect, but it is certainly also a com. Like guttural laughing out loud parts of this. Her one friend joining her and her mom and watching the dramas, him being so invested in it was funny. The wedding call out with Will thinking her mom is in love with this old ass man and he got her pregnant just for it to be that guy's son. That's some great stuff. And then the funniest moment was when Will and Viv were starting off. They were close and waiting for one of them to make a move. And out of anxiety, Will just drops to the floor. Like she goes full dead weight mode and hits the floor like a sack of bricks. Some good old slapstick to diffuse the tension the two had. One last moment that shows just how cheerful this movie is happened during the end. Viv and Will reunited at this big party, they kiss and start dancing, some people leave in disgust and react very poorly. But there's this one elderly couple that sees this and just hits the dance floor. They don't play, they don't discriminate. These two see people being rude and decided it is their duty to keep the vibes up. I love them. They have no other scenes, not a single line, but they are my everything. I'm obsessed with this older couple. Sometimes I watch a movie and I really enjoy it, like Saving Face. I gave it 4 stars on Letterboxd. Then I think about the movie for a couple days and sit down to write about it. Throughout this time, I realized I liked the movie a lot more than I thought I did. Saving Face has spoken to me, and articulating what makes it great made me love it even more. I don't change my Letterboxd scores once I watch them, but in my heart, this is a very high 4.5 now. I really love it and could see it sneaking up to being one of my favorite movies ever the more I think about it or on rewatches. I love this couple and how cute they are. I love this movie and how cute it is. The decades categories are easily my least favorite to pick. They just aren't as fun to pick as the other ones, but I see them as a necessary evil to explore all times of film history. For the 30s, I went with a good old Charlie Chaplin joint. It has become a tradition at this point, so I watched City Lights. It's about a homeless man, the tramp, and his nomadic antics throughout the city. He gets himself in trouble with the police throughout, but he also falls in love with a girl, but oh no, she's blind. He wants to pay for her to have a surgery to see, and her rent money, but he's fired, so he turns to boxing and gets knocked out. He ends up making friends with some rich dude but is accused of stealing the money. He ends up getting this money to the blind girl before being carted off to prison. Once out, he visits her work and she can see. They end happily together. I said the same thing during last year's challenge, but how the hell do you review these old silent movies? You can't talk about the plot at all, there's hardly any. Am I gonna sit here and dissect the technical craft? No, that just feels bad. Yeah, it's grainy. They didn't know what they were doing and they didn't have the technology. This is the building blocks of film right here, but the foundation is rough. If the review on this one is short, there's definitely a reason why. This movie was the first one Charlie Chaplin had the chance to make with sound. He began developing it in 1928, and you could have added the dialogue, but he saw talkies as a fad that would just pass in 3 years, and opted for synchronized sound. So there was a sound effect track that was playing alongside the live music, but he opted for no talking in the movie. Chaplin sits in this really interesting spot in film history. He was a giant of his time, broke a lot of grounds and made films that stand the test of time. But he was stuck in his ways a lot, and was washed over by refusing to change with the times. While he did eventually make that transition, it came too late. I find it funny to look at this and how he thought this was peak. That's the stupid title cards will always be the best way to make movies, and that talking in them just wouldn't work. I did quite like this movie. It had a cute story with the tramp and the blind girl, a nice heartwarming center to all the shenanigans around it, which there were plentiful and they managed to be funny. It had me smiling but never fully laughing out loud. It's just so hard to connect with these older movies, the title cards disrupting the pace of it all, but it was a solid enough time and fills the requirement of old-timey movie pretty well. If you're gonna explore this time period, this isn't a bad one to do it with. I don't hate watching these movies for just history's sake and learning more about film, but as entertainment, I don't think they're the best thing to go to. And that closes off the next 4 movies in my 2026 Criterion Challenge in the next 4 categories. For the rest of the year, my plan is to release these at the end of each month. However, due to schedules and stuff, I might shift them like 1 week and it might not come out at exactly the end. But in general, expect a video like this once a month. Meanwhile, I will have some other videos this month. I will review the Best Picture winner. I'll probably have my predictions for next year's Oscars up and sort of finish out award season and another video in there too. If you enjoyed, please like, subscribe, and comment. Thanks for watching.